Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Brace yourselves for another episode of Rock and Read. Today we will be reading Chapter 11 of Janis, Her Life in Music. Chapter 11 is called Big Brother's Chick Singer. We finally gotten to the part where Janis becomes famous. A quote from Janis kicks off the chapter. It says, "Playing is the mostest fun there is. Feeling things and really getting into it, that's what it's all about." Here we go. The San Francisco music scene is, first of all, the freedom to create here, Janis said 9 months after her arrival. Musicians ended up here together with the complete freedom to do whatever they wanted to and came up with their own kind of music. In San Francisco, Janis would expand her vocal style and find validation among a new gang, a close-knit group of iconoclasts who had been on the forefront of an emerging counterculture. Her adopted musical family, Big Brother and the Holding Company, served to provide Janis stability and opportunity, allowing her to forgo a unique artistic identity. While simultaneously propelling them to fame, Janis's voice would become both the key to the struggling band's success and the reason for its eventual demise. Big Brother was doomed to be left behind, but Janis's immersion into the hot Ashbury scene would culminate in her finding her voice as a new kind of female singer. On this, her third journey to San Francisco, Janis's traveling companion did not rush to reach their Emerald City. Much to her delight, Travis Rivers took time to romance Janis along the way. Amorous stops in El Paso, Texas, Juarez, Mexico, and Golden, New Mexico cemented their bond. Halfway through New Mexico, Janis claimed the following year, "I was conned into being into the rock business by this guy that was a good ball. I was into being in Big Brother." In her origin myth, she downplays her burning ambition to become a successful singer. But in reality, of course, the con artist in her life had been Peter DeBlanc, a harrowing tale of which she rarely spoke. Rivers, on the other hand, drove Janis to her destiny in one of her own making. On Friday, June 3rd, 1966, they reached San Francisco, where they connected with Helms, recently married to an aspiring actress. He now wore his hair below his shoulders and had cultivated a full beard. With his wire-rimmed glasses and vintage morning coat, he looked like a character from the Old West. He paid $35 a month for Janis's new home, a room in the Lower Pacific Heights district at 1947 Pine Street. When Janis had left in '65, Pine Street was becoming ground zero of the developing counterculture. Helms fell in love with the family doghouse, communal residents of Pine Street named for their love of canines or possibly their scheme to launder drug-dealing profits into Family Dog, a pet cemetery startup in a vacant lot that never materialized. The Family Dog began hosting themed rock and roll dances, beginning with a tribute to Dr. Strange, held at the Longshoremen's Hall on Fisherman's Wharf, where fun-loving seekers took LSD while partying to bands such as Jefferson Airplane and The Charlatans, founded by Janis's friends George Hunter and Dan Hicks. By the summer of '66, the scene had expanded to weekly psychedelic dances at the Fillmore Auditorium and most recently, the Avalon Ballroom. On their second night in San Francisco, Janis and Rivers went to see the Grateful Dead at the Fillmore, an old ballroom located up a rickety staircase in a predominantly black neighborhood. Inside, she joined swirling bodies, long-haired men and women, dressed in an eclectic melange of vintage clothing, exotic fabrics, and ethnic garb. 7 different centuries thrown together in one group, according to one initiate. "The big dances blow your mind," is how Janis later described them in a letter home. "Fantastic. The clothes and people, pure sensuousness, bombarding the senses, astounding you." From the Palo Alto folk scene, Janis knew the Dead's leaders and main vocalists, guitarist Jerry Garcia and Ron Pigpen McKernan, who played the organ and blues harp. She instantly turned into the band's extended blues jams, recognizing Stealin' Stealin' and a few other songs. Their loud sonics and the psychedelic light show projected by Pine Streeter Bill Ham, melding blobs of color onto a band, transformed the music into something she had never experienced. "It completely stoned me," Janis remembered. "Phew!" She hadn't been so energized since doing the dirty bop in Louisiana roadhouses, or so thrilled by a scene since first encountering Austin's ghetto. On Monday morning, June 6, Janis wrote her parents with a great deal of trepidation after Jim Langdon informed her that Dorothy had become hysterical when he told her where Janis was. Apologizing for sneaking off to San Francisco, she explained that Chet Helms, old friend, now is Mr. Big in SF. Owns 3 big working rock and roll bands with bizarre names like Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band, Big Brother and the Holding Company, etc. Seems the whole city has gone rock and roll, and he assured me fame and fortune. Janis painted a wholesome picture of a road trip west. Camped out at night along the Rio Grande, collected rocks, etc. She tried to downplay her excitement and persuade her parents, and perhaps herself, that she wasn't diving back into a life that had almost killed her. She sounded nonchalant about that afternoon's scheduled first meeting with Big Brother and the Holding Company, and joked about the outcome, comparing herself to one of the few female pop stars of the day. Supposed to rehearse with the band this afternoon. After that, I guess I'll know whether I want to stay and do that for a while. Right now, my position is ambivalent. I'm glad I came. Nice to see the city, a few friends, but I'm not at all sold on the idea of becoming the poor man's Cher. Evident from the letters, Janis's concern for her parents' feelings, and her worries for herself. I just want to tell you that I'm trying to keep a level head about everything and not go overboard with enthusiasm. I'm sure you're both convinced my self-destructive streak has won out again, but I'm really trying. I do plan on coming back to school, unless, I must admit, this turns into a good thing. Chet is a very important man out here now, and he wanted me specifically to sing with this band. I haven't tried yet, so I can't say what I'm going to do. So far, I'm safe, well-fed, and nothing has been stolen. I'm awfully sorry to be such a disappointment to you. I understand your fears of my coming here, and must admit I share them. But I really do think there's an awfully good chance I won't blow it this time. There's really nothing more I can say now. You can't possibly want for me to be a winner more than I do. That afternoon, only our third full day in the city, Janis met Big Brother and the Holding Company for the first time at their Henry Street rehearsal space in an old carriage house built for horse-drawn fire trucks. It was an organic place, recalled guitarist Sam Houston Andrew III, who was 24. People were nursing babies in one corner and making silkscreen prints in another. One of the building's tenants, artist Stanley Mouse Miller, who designed psychedelic posters advertising family dog dances and other events, with partner Alton Kelly, hailed from Detroit, as did Big Brother's 26-year-old guitarist James Gurley. From her folky days, Janis remembered bassist Peter Albin, 22, who had formed the band in spring 1965 with Andrew, then a grad student at the University of California at Berkeley, originally playing together in a massive Victorian boarding house at 1090 Page Street, owned by Albin's uncle, Henry. Big Brother was discovered early on and named by Helms, who charged 50 cents admission to their Wednesday night jam sessions. He then introduced them to Gurley, who had been working out his odd tunings alone in a closet. Helms booked the group at clubs and happenings, including San Francisco's first Trips Festival, and then at the Family Dog's Avalon Ballroom, which he had opened 2 months earlier in April. After several personal changes, Big Brother completed its lineup in March, settling on 26-year-old drummer David Getz, a New York-born artist and Fulbright scholar. As far back as 1963, James Gurley had heard Janis sing at the Coffee Gallery, where the strength and the power of her voice blew my mind. Around the time that Peter Albin first saw her in Berkeley and Palo Alto, Sam Andrew had never experienced Janis firsthand, but had heard of her through friends. Owen Getz had no prior knowledge of Janis, and the night before her arrival he dreamed of a gorgeous woman as their new vocalist. Janis looked more Texas tomboy than glamorous girl singer. Her hair pulled back, she wore denim cutoffs and a baggy shirt, along with a healthy glow. The guys, on the other hand, looked hip, with longish hair and cool clothes. Gurley, in particular, had the air of a shaman, his light brown locks hanging straight down, and his gaunt face and blue eyes projecting quiet intensity. Peter Albin, with a grown-out page boy and colorful shirt, and Dave Getz, with an unruly dark mop, traded humorous banter. Tall, lanky Sam Andrew, with his chiseled, handsome face and shaggy hair, exuded a friendly warmth. When I first met Janis, she was not a stranger to me, he said. Her accent, her attitudes, even her clothes made her seem like a sister or cousin from my mother's side of the family, who were all from the same part of Texas as Janis. I met them all, and you know how it is when you meet someone. You don't even remember what they look like. You're so spaced by what's happening, Janis recounted. I was in Space City, man. I was scared to death. I didn't know how to sing the stuff. I had never sung with electric music. I had never sung with drums. The volume of sound with the amps cranked up overwhelmed her at first. It was as if she had caught hold of a passing freight train barreling through the night, and was not sure if she could hold on, according to Sam Andrew. She always had a firm grip on the pitch, though, never a sharp or flat moment. She sang really fast, and she talked really fast. Janis always had this thing of total insecurity and total power at the same time, and it was really something to be confronted with both of them. You never knew which one to relate to. As they started playing, she realized the guys were treating her like a bandmate rather than an auditioning hopeful. Big Brother had played dozens of shows over the past 6 months and built an enthusiastic following. But the musicians aspired to the kind of success the six-piece Jefferson Airplane enjoyed. The first of the new bands to score a major record deal, the Airplane had 2 lead singers, former Folkies Marty Balin and Singe Anderson, and the male-female dynamic worked well. An up-and-coming group, the Great Society, also featured a charismatic female singer, Grace Slick. Big Brother wanted a woman's voice to complement Peter Albin's baritone. They auditioned several, but no one clicked, until Janis. She knocked us out instantly, David Getz said, and Big Brother welcomed her into the band. Big Brother's next show was less than a week away, a double bill with the Grateful Dead at the Avalon. They all knew the 1920s blues, Trouble in Mind, and C.C. Ryder, and Janis jumped in on vocals. At first, she sounded like Bessie Smith on a sped-up 78, Sam Andrew recalled. It was very treble, very thin in the upper register, like a tape on fast forward. With no experience singing over electric guitars and drums, she quickly altered her style and pitched her vocals to soar over the roaring wall of sound, sometimes shrieking like Roy Erickson of Austin's 13th floor elevators. She seemed so scared, Henry Street resident and Snetzer Susie Perry said, trying to please, wanting so much to belong. I felt so sorry for her. Janis finally loosened up on the gospel song Down on Me. I had heard it before and thought I could sing it, and they did, all the chords, she recalled. She secularized Down on Me, turning it into a sensual, sultry blues. Janis changed the lyrics as well as the way she sang it, cutting the religious references, said Sam Andrew. Janis's voice was right on the money from the first minute she sang with us. Still working with Big Brother and the holding company, and it's really fun, she wrote the Joplins later that week on the eve of her Avalon debut. 4 guys in the group, Sam, Peter, Dave, and James. We rehearse every afternoon in a garage that's part of a loft an artist friend of theirs owns, and people constantly drop in and listen. Everyone seems very taken with my singing, although I am a little dated. This kind of music is different than I'm used to. She enclosed an ad for the Avalon gig, clipped from the San Francisco Chronicle, and commented on the scene, intending to humor her family. Oh, I've collected more bizarre names of groups to send. Can you believe these? The Grateful Dead, The Love, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, The Leaves, The Grassroots. Tomorrow night at the Avalon Dance, some people from Mercury Records will be there to hear the Grateful Dead. With a name like that, they have to be good. And Big Brother, etc. And I'm going to get to sing. Gosh, I'm so excited. We've worked out about 5 or 6 numbers this week. One I really like called Down on Me, an old spiritual, revitalized, and slightly with the new treatment. Janis reassured her parents she was safe and living in a respectable place, a room in a rooming house. Very nice place with a kitchen and a living room and even an iron and ironing board. 4 other people living here, 1 school teacher, 1 artist, don't know the rest. She also put a positive spin on her chances of success and on the professionalism of Helms Corporation, the family dog, even though in reality it personified laid-back hippie disorganization. Chet Helms heads a rock and roll corporation called the Family Dog, replete with emblem and answering service. Very fancy. Being my entrepreneur, and mostly having gotten me out here without money, I still have $30 in the bank I'm hoarding. Chet rented me this place for a month. He says if the band and I don't make it, to forget it, and if we do, we'll have plenty of money. And she told them what they wanted to hear about herself, lying that she was something of a recluse. She also dangled the hope that she might return to college and assured them that she was not taking speed. I'm still okay. Don't worry, haven't lost or gained any weight, and my head's still fine. And I'm still really thinking of coming back to school, so don't give up on me yet. What Janis didn't write was that college would be a backup plan if she wasn't accepted by the band's hip audience. Dave Getz, who drove her to rehearsals, recalled that she constantly wondered if she was following the right path. She had a lot of misgivings, he reflected. But during rehearsals, Janis learned quickly, experimenting with new vocal techniques. Taking another cue from Roky Erickson, she began to let loose banshee wails with Gurley and Andrew's guitars crescendoed in their improvisational jams. With Peter Albin's baritone taking the lead in most songs, Janis unleashed high-pitched shrieks as accents. On Big Brother's sped-up version of Land of a Thousand Dances, her raspy sound hinted at Wilson Pickett's soulful version, then on its way into the top 10. From her teenage days cruising Port Arthur with the radio blasting, Janis already knew some of Big Brother's rock and roll repertoire. Little Richard's Oh, My Soul and Shirley and Louise Let the Good Times Roll. On a 12-bar blues such as Tommy Tucker's High Heel Sneakers, Janis pushed her voice as far as she could, trying to avoid sounding dazed like a coffeehouse folkie. Big Brother twisted blues tunes into another sonic realm so that she barely recognized them. On I Know You Rider, originally a 1927 Blind Lemon Jefferson recording, Janis added call-and-response vocals, while James Gurley, nicknamed Archfiend of the Universe for his dark, cacophonous guitar style, played atonal, angular leads. Albin kicked off Howlin' Wolf's Moanin' at Midnight, joining in on vocals. Janis added startling yelps. 5 days after their first meeting, she was ready for her debut. The Avalon Ballroom took up the top 2 floors of a former dance academy on Sutter Street, not far from Janis's former home at the Goodman Building. Before the venue's April '66 opening, Helms had installed fluorescent and strobe lights to accentuate the audience's day-glow painted skin, while partiers glided across burnished wooden floors. From the balcony, Bill Ham's amoeba-shaped projections provided the only stage lighting. On Friday, June 10th, we boys came out and did our insane free jazz Speedy Clash jam, St. Andrew recalled of Janis's opening night. Then, after their first few numbers of freak rock, Janis strolled on stage, taking her place next to Peter Albin, who nonchalantly told the crowd, "Now, we'd like to introduce Janis Joplin." Nobody had ever heard of me, Janis recounted later. I was just some chick, didn't have any hip clothes or nothing like that. I had on what I was wearing to college. I got on stage and I started singing. Phew! The crowd, already under the influence of the sonic barrage, focused mostly on Gurley's Les Paul guitar. He played out there, said Bill Ham. With Ham's light show projecting color onto Gurley's skinny physique, his abstract noodlings riveted the stoned audience. But when Janis began to move rhythmically, shaking her tambourine and belting down on me, the audience was instantly transfixed. What a rush, man, a real live drug rush. Janis recalled vividly of the moment. All I remember is the sensation. What a gas, man. The music was boom, boom, boom. And the people were all dancing, and the lights, and I was standing up there singing into the microphone and getting it on, and phew, I dug it. I said, I think I'll stay, boys. From that night on, Janis's world revolved around Big Brother. She was fabulous, Helms said of her debut. The audience concurred. They had never heard anything like it. Near daily rehearsals followed, with Janis having passed the test, being further integrated into the group. A quick study, she diligently jotted down lyrics, and the band adjusted its approach to make room for the dynamic new vocalist. We started trying to sing harmonies with Janis, and we added very defined beginnings and endings to our songs, according to Dave Getz. The musicians shortened some of their lengthy improvisations to accommodate her singing, while Janis expanded her vocal palette, veering from high-pitched shrieks to gospel-inspired testifying to Bessie Smith blues. Big Brother valued democracy, with each member except Getz taking vocal turns, so that Janis sang lead on only 4 or 5 numbers, while adding harmonies to the guys' songs. 2 weeks after her June debut, Big Brother returned to the Avalon for a weekend of gigs, 2 shows each night. The first of several bookings over the next few months, the evening set the pattern for Janis's new life. On stage, she grew less inhibited with each appearance. Chet Helms compared her with a performer he had seen only a short time before in coffee houses. Suddenly, this person who would stand upright with her fists clenched was all over the stage. Roky Erickson had modeled himself after the screaming style of Little Richard, and Janis's initial stage presence came from Roky, and ultimately Little Richard. It was a very different Janis. She had transformed herself from self-conscious folk blues singer to emotive, sensual performer. Soon her impassioned vocals drew audiences to the lip of the stage. I couldn't stay still, Janis explained later. I'd never danced when I sang, just the old sit and pluck blues thing. But there I was, moving and jumping. I couldn't hear, so I sang louder and louder. You have to sing loud and move loud with all that in back of you. Peter Albin continued as frontman, making arch or absurd comments. Janis would lean over and banter, "What are you talking about?" as she played tambourine. The 800-capacity Avalon filled with Big Brother fans and the curious at $2 each. The whole environment was the show, said Helms. The crowd was as key an element of the performance as the musicians themselves. On the low unlit stage, the band blended with listeners, which lent a casual intimacy that helped Janis feel comfortable. There was this sense you were part of the audience, Getz said, and the vibe of the audience and the energy they gave you and that you gave the audience was an interactive thing. Everybody got a high. Janis had found her tribe and herself. When I sing, I feel, like when you're first in love, she'd tell a journalist the following year. Like when you're first touching somebody. Chills, things slipping all over me. It was so sensual, so vibrant, loud, crazy. Fellow musicians were duly impressed by Janis's talent. Though the stage had no monitor speakers to aim the sound back at the performers, she managed usually to stay on key, a rarity for most local performers, and yet be heard over the band's roaring guitars. Her old friend Jorma Kakaukin, now the lead singer of Jefferson Airplane, brought bandmate Jack Cassidy to check out Janis. The first time I heard her sing, recalled the bassist, she was just fantastic. One of the first few white singers who could sing the blues well. She hit the Bessie Smith genre right on the money, hit it solid. Cassidy, a rabid record collector, would eventually give Janis the R&B song that would take her to the top 10. Janis soon began forming a personal bond with her bandmates. Albin, married with a young daughter, was a bit standoffish, but she became close to Dave Getz and the others. We made out in the back seat of my car 3 or 4 times, Getz recounted. I thought maybe we'd have something, but she didn't want to get involved with me sexually. At one point she said, "No, I can't do this. I've got to go." She and Travis Rivers were still sweethearts, according to Rivers, but they were drifting apart. Living on Pine Street, where she used to buy drugs, Janis worried about crossing paths with speed freaks and dealers. She was very afraid of drugs, Getz recalled. She said, "I don't ever want to see anybody shooting drugs." Pretty ironic statement there. Then one night, when she discovered Rivers and a friend hitting up in their room, she freaked out. Apologizing, Travis claimed that they were injecting mescaline, not speed, but Janis was furious. She was easily bruised, Rivers said. I had hurt her feelings once before, and I had to hold her in the air over my head with her arms facing away from me so she wouldn't hurt me. She was screaming. I never forgave myself for it. Trying to win her back, he proposed marriage the next day, but she turned him down. Certainly thoughts of Peter DeBlanc's betrayal and false promises were still fresh, she said. I'm about to become incredibly famous and will have access to any boy I want, Rivers recalled, and I want to take advantage of it. In the 4 years he had known Janis, he had experienced her 2 sides, he explained. A perfectly sweet, wonderful, well-bred, lace-curtained girl, the Janis that craved the white picket fence. Her other side was the rowdy, cackling West Texas cowgirl/sailor persona, which she presented when she was unsure of how she was going to be accepted. That was the side she used on stage. Rivers moved out of their tiny room with a bed, sink, and not much else, and slept in a closet down the hall near the communal bathroom. Janis began to socialize with the band, and at one point, when she and Getz stopped by the Anxious Asp, she ran into her former lover, Jay Whitaker. She was a very cute, foxy little black chick, Getz recalled. We were playing pool with her, and when we left, Janis told me, "That chick, she does something to me. We had a thing together way back, and she really turns me on." Janis wasn't doing it to shock me, she was just out there with it. Though a worldly artist from New York who had studied at the San Francisco Art Institute, Getz admitted to being really unfamiliar with that whole possibility. I didn't know what to make of it. Janis soon made peace with her old flame, and Jay would bring her new girlfriend to Big Brother shows. However, Janis was, again, abruptly confronted with her past when a letter arrived from DeBlanc, who had somehow gotten her address. Oh boy. Writing from Rochester, New York, he had chastised her for quitting school and returning to San Francisco. "Are you really a go-go girl now? Have you converted to a role of diddly-bop?" Feigning concern about the real Janis, he questioned her preservation instincts, self-control. She saved that and other DeBlanc letters, although it's unclear if she wrote back or ever saw him again. Among her bandmates, Janis was attracted to Sam Andrew, a bookworm and former grad student in linguistics, but she was particularly drawn to the aloof and spacey Jim Gurley. The Detroit native had been a musician after briefly serving as a human hood ornament in his father's daredevil driving act, during which the car, with James secured to the hood, sped through a wheel of fire. Gurley's wife Nancy, a former teacher and also from Detroit, was a vivid and constant presence around the band, as was their baby boy, Hongo. The Gurleys had lived among the Hushel Indians in Mexico in the early 60s, and Nancy shared what she had picked up there and through her study of the occult. Described by Alban as the original Earth Mother, Nancy was as talkative and outgoing as her husband was quiet and introspective. While he had spent hours trying to replicate the sound of John Coltrane's saxophone on his guitar and execute John Lee Hooker blues riffs, Nancy crafted god-eye symbols from colorful yarn. A mystical totem signifying the power of seeing and understanding the unseeable and the unknowable, the god's eye became Big Brother's band symbol. Nancy and Peter Alban's wife Cindy made large multicolored god's eyes that adorned their amplifiers. Nancy's style, long peasant dresses worn with strains of hand-strung beads, greatly affected Janis's nascent look, and she began wearing necklaces Nancy gave her. The first weekend in July, Nancy didn't join the band on a trip to Monterey, where Big Brother headlined a two-day Independence dance at the very fairgrounds where Janis had met Bob Dylan in 1963. This time, Joan Baez was in the audience. Janis, having grown more confident on stage, gyrated and swayed while the guys jammed. Alban, who reported he didn't dance much, was put off when she tried to be sexual toward her bandmates, particularly when she put the make on me. He recalled, "She said, 'Let's dance,' and did all the rubby-dubby stuff." Apparently James Gurley felt differently, and that night he and Janis slipped away and had sex. The attraction deepened, and he moved into Janis's room on Pine Street, with Gurley explaining later that they were in love. The tryst lasted for a couple of weeks until Nancy barged in one morning while they were lounged in bed and demanded her husband return home. An open-minded bohemian who grew up in a wealthy home and earned her master's in literature, Nancy believed in free love, but she had her limits. James moved back in, and surprisingly Nancy and Janis's friendship flourished, even while Janis continued to carry a torch for the intriguing guitarist. Big Brother was booked for a few out-of-town gigs, beginning with the Red Dog Saloon in Virginia City, Nevada, where the Charlatans had kicked off the rock and roll revival meets LSD-taking counterculture during the summer of '65. While Janis had been recuperating in Port Arthur, she heard from friends about the 1859 mining town that had been invaded by the family dog and their pals. It became the testing ground for the Hyde-Ashbury scene, with Bill Ham projecting the first light shows while the Charlatans, art students and musicians wearing Old West garb, played rock and roll at the 19th century saloon, with most participants tripping on mushrooms or acid. The Red Dog's handbills, drawn by Alton Kelly, set off a demand for unique art nouveau gone amok posters, advertising Avalon and Fillmore shows. Janis started her own collection, grabbing phantasmoric posters from walls and lampposts in the Height to decorate her room. When Big Brother arrived in Virginia City for a weekend of shows, Janis must have laughed at the irony of escaping Texas only to be surrounded at the Red Dog by would-be cowboys decked out in hats, chaps, and gun belts, some with real firearms, and women dressed as dance hall girls. In 3 years' time, the music industry trade magazine Cashbox would anoint Janis the rock and roll Calamity Jane. Big Brother also flew to Vancouver, British Columbia to play Canada's first Trips Festival. When no one met them at the airport, the near-penniless band members had to shelf their equipment and hitchhike to the venue. Joining them at the Captain Consciousness Presents, The Trip, an electronic performance, was the Grateful Dead, who had brought along its soundman and premier LSD chemist Owsley Stanley. Janis had once sampled his potent crystal meth. When not running the band's sound, Owsley wandered the concert, giving away blue tabs of acid. Getz took a hit and got very, very high, he recalled. Janis, according to Sam Andrew, distrusted psychedelic drugs because, she told him, they make you think too much. Janis had devoured J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so performing at Bilbo's birthday celebration at San Francisco's California Hall in late July was a gas. Big Brother's sets, recorded, bootlegged, and released on CD decades later, document her evolving sound, less than 2 months after she had joined the band. Janis had taught them Pal St. John's Bye Bye Baby, its loping tempo and spare arrangement showcasing her vocals. Judging from the applause, it was a crowd favorite. The group also performed a kind of psychedelic-dosed vaudeville set piece that began with an off-key a cappella's Amazing Grace, with Albin, Andrew, and Janis on vocals. Then Albin's zany rap spoofed an LSD trip in which a High Street prophet offered a holy sacrament, 350 microgram Owsleys promising, "You'll see God, maybe hell," and a lot of other things. While Janis added exclamatory, "Yes!" Albin's tale unfolds with the LSD tablet stuck in a recipient's throat, while modulating and accelerating guitars build into a sonic frenzy. In character, Albin describes vividly a hallucination in which I saw a whole Bill Ham light show. The band then segues into Land of a Thousand Dances before veering back to Amazing Grace. Janis ends the traditional spiritual with a vocal solo in her newly developed yowl. It was nearly impossible not to stare constantly at her, Great Society's Darby Slick recalled. She pranced, she strutted, she shrieked, she whispered. The word of mouth was, "A star is born." With each successive gig, Janis's self-assurance grew. After playing a high-profile bill, she wrote home about Big Brother's reception among established musicians. 2 of the bands have hit records out. The Grassroots, who incidentally are big fans of ours, even wear our buttons when they play, and the Jefferson Airplane, and were very well received. But we got an ovation, bigger than any other group, for slow blues in a minor key. Wow, I can't help it. I love it. People really treat me with deference. I'm somebody important. Janis had never had this kind of acclaim in her life, and it felt better than any drug. She had been including sigh in letters for years, but now the contentment and happiness the word radiated nearly jumped off the page. She realized she had made the right decision to join the band. The slow blues in a minor key came from one of Janis's favorite artists, Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton. She too had relocated to the Bay Area, where she played the Monterey Jazz Festival and local venues. Janis, Peter, Sam, and James saw her at the Both and a small jazz club on Divisadero Street. She sang her famous Hound Dog, but the song that really grabbed her attention was her original composition, Ball and Chain. Riveted, Janis jotted down the lyrics, and after the show, they went backstage to meet the 39-year-old singer and ask if they could cover her song. She was a tough woman with a truck driver style, Andrew recalled. Thornton gave her the okay, but warned, "Don't it up." At its next rehearsal, Big Brother recast the song in a minor key, slowing it to a glacial pace. Janis squeezed every bit of hurt she had suffered into I Want to Love You and I Wanted to Hold You, Yeah, Till the Day I Die. Ball and Chain became a Big Brother showstopper. 1 year later, the song would introduce Janis to the world. Big Brother, like other groups on the scene, had evolved into a kind of family. Following the lead of the Grateful Dead, the members decided to move to Marion County and live communally. Not far from the Dead's compound at a former children's camp, they found a rustic cottage amid a redwood forest up a long drive outside of tiny Laguintes. The house was built in 1904 by botanist and ornithologist C. Hart Merriam as a base to study plants and wildlife. The erudite naturalist became friendly with local Miwok Indians, who helped him choose the bucolic spot atop a hill surrounded by in-ground springs. Early visitors to the exceptional property included naturalist John Muir, botanist Alice Eastwood, and President Theodore Roosevelt. By the 1960s, a forest ranger owned the place, and when his marriage broke up, his former wife rented it to Big Brother for 6 months. Out in Marin, they still frowned on long hair and the whole hippie scene, said Albin, who signed the lease. Near the bottom of the driveway sat a large propane tank on which someone had scrawled, "Carlos is alive," and "well in Argentina." So the house became known as Argentina. The August day she moved in, Janis wrote her parents, who had not yet replied to her previous letters. She remained determined to be seen as their dutiful daughter. At last, a tranquil day and time to write all the good news. I am now safely moved into my new room in our beautiful house in the country. I'm the only member of the band out here so far, sitting in a comfortable chair by the fireplace, doors wide open, and a 180-degree view of the trees, redwood, and fir bliss. I've never felt so relaxed in my life. This is the most fantastic house and setting. Of course, part of my comfort is due to the fact that this is the first day in 10 or 11 that I've had to relax at all. We've been working every night for 11 days. I've got the best bedroom in the house. I got here first, with sunshine all day. In SF, short for San Francisco, you have to wear a heavy coat even in the afternoon, but it's just perfect here. I plan on getting a wonderful tan, and it's not too hot like Texas. Just lovely, 75 to 80 degrees. Don't you envy me? If you have a map, look on the coast for Stinson Beach. We're about 10 miles inland from there. Though small, the house comfortably fit Big Brother and the musicians' partners. Dave Getz carved out a space behind the kitchen. Janis's sunny alcove with a wall of windows was on the second floor next to the room with Peter and Cindy Albin and their young daughter. The three girlies bunked in a third room upstairs. Living in a shack behind the house were Sam Andrew and his girlfriend, Rita Bergman, a friend of Nancy's from Detroit whom everyone called Speed Freak Rita. As much as Janis had tried to avoid meth, the drug was all around. Her new living situation influenced Janis's wardrobe, and she emulated Nancy Gurley's style and that of other women on the scene. Her mother's daughter, she wrote Dorothy about San Francisco fashions, illustrated with sketches. A fashion note. Thought y'all would like to know what everyone looks like out here. The girls are, of course, young and beautiful looking with long, straight hair. The beatnik look, I call it, is definitely in. Pants, sandals, capes of all kinds, far-out handmade jewelry, or loose-fitting dresses and sandals. The younger girls wear very tight bell-bottoms, cut very low around the hips, and short tops, bare midriffs. But the boys are the real peacocks. All have hair at least beetle length, sketch. Most rock and roll people have theirs about this long, sketch. And some, our manager Chet's for example, as long as this, sketch. Much longer than mine. And this ultra-mod dress, boots, always boots, tight low pants and houndstooth checks, stripes, even polka dots. Very fancy shirts, prints, very loud high collars, Tom Jones full sleeves, fancy print ties, Bob Dylan caps. Conforming to the style to the extent of my budget, I have a pair of very wide whale corduroy hip hugger pants which I wear with borrowed boots. Look very in. On stage, I still wear my black and gold spangly blouse with either a black skirt and high boots or with black Levi's and sandals. Janis planned already to make her onstage image more distinctive by dressing up and creating a performance persona, like Bessie Smith with her beaded gowns and feather hats, and Rose Maddox with her colorful embroidery and fringe. I want to get something out of Gold Wame, she wrote. Very simple, but real showbiz looking. I want the audience to look at me as a real performer, whereas now the look is just one of us who stepped on stage. Soon, she'd have a sleeveless shift made of gold metallic fabric. Living in Languitas, Big Brother often partied with the Grateful Dead and Quicksilver Messenger service, which had moved to a rundown ranch in nearby Olema. At one of the gatherings of the Dead's compound, Janis took up with Pigpen, who shared his bottle of Southern Comfort. So far she had stayed away from drugs, except for weed, but she had started drinking again and enjoyed the sugary whiskey Pigpen favored. Though he looked tough like a Hell's Angel, Pigpen was a shy man, and like Janis, found booze the best way to loosen up. Eventually, the two consummated their friendship, and usually spent the night together at the Dead's place. On many a night they would kill off a couple of bottles of Southern Comfort, play and sing themselves into a romantic mood, and retire to Pig's room. The Dead's Phil Lesh recounted, which was situated just above mine. I could hear them grunting and screeching ecstatically very clearly, and I often wonder if the line, "Did you ever waken to the sound of street cats making love?" from Bob Weir's song Looks Like Rain was inspired by the music Pig and Janis made in the dead of night. Though their fling was short-lived, Janis and Pigpen remained fond of each other, sharing a bottle, playing pool, and singing the blues together. Janis sent her parents a magazine photo spread that included the Dead and circled his picture. "Isn't Pigpen cute?" They make Pigpen t-shirts now with his picture on it, for fans. I have one, red. On double bills with the Dead, Janis sometimes joined Pigpen on a duet of Bobby Bland's Turn On Your Love Light. The extended jam was usually the show's finale. At the Argentina house, Big Brother rehearsed every day, working up new original songs. The group diligently prepped for a high-profile opening slot for its hero, Bo Diddley, at the Avalon Ballroom on August 12th and 13th. Everybody just committed themselves completely to the band, according to Getz. It was just, this is going to be it. That weekend, the Avalon's Earthquake Dance was packed, with 2,000 tickets sold. Big Brother played one of its best shows, and Janis strutted and sang like she was born for the stage. Everybody got a sort of high, said Getz. The whole place just took off like a rocket ship. Afterward, in the cramped dressing room, Elektra Records A&R man Paul Rothschild visited the band. In just over 2 months with Big Brother, Janis's talent and stage presence were attracting interest from the music business. Rothschild had made a name for himself producing the 1965 debut LP for Chicago's Paul Butterfield Blues Band, a big attraction in San Francisco. Rothschild and Elektra owner Jack Holzman requested that Janis attended a meeting with them to discuss her joining a supergroup of blues musicians based in Los Angeles. A few days later, they invited her to a Berkeley studio to jam with the possible lineup. On acoustic guitars, Janis's old friend Steve Mann, and the even dozen jug band Stefan Grossman, a New Yorker. Joining Janis on vocals was blues vocalist/guitarist Taj Mahal, most recently a member of the LA-based Rising Suns with Ry Cooder. "We were all excited about playing together," Stefan Grossman recalled. "We played and talked for about 3 or 4 hours, and the vibe was friendly. We did the Lee Dorsey tune Get Out of My Life Woman, and the combo of Taj and Janis's voices was pretty amazing." Janis was excited about this turn of events, but if she joined the Elektra group, she'd have to leave her Big Brother family, whom she loved, but thought lacked commercial prospects. She wrote to the Joplins about her dilemma, astutely assessing such a career move and asking their advice. Rothschild feels that popular music can't continue getting farther and farther out and louder and more chaotic, which is now. He feels there's going to be a reaction and old-fashioned music, blues, shuffles, melodic stuff is going to come back in. Well, Elektra wants to form the group to be this, and they want me. They want to rent us a house in L.A. and support us until we get enough stuff worked out. Then, first, they want us to do a single and an album. Now they're a good company, and since we'd be in their group, they'd push the out of us. And he says we couldn't help but make it. Now, I don't know what to do. I have to figure out whether rock and roll is going out, how deep my loyalties to Big Brother go. The band is very uptight at me for even going to the meeting, and I can't understand it. And for another, I'd be under contract to a record company from the beginning. I'd be starting out on the top almost, and I'm not sure yet whether the rest of the band, Big Brother, will indeed want to work hard enough to be good enough to make it. We're not now, I don't think. Oh God, I'm just fraught with indecision, and let's face it, I'm flattered. Rothschild said I was one of the 2, maybe 3 best female singers in the country, and they want me. When she reported Elektra's offer to Big Brother, Peter Albin flew into a rage. As the group gathered outside on the large sunny deck of its home, he argued for why she should not quit Big Brother. "It was a terrible, traumatic experience," Albin recounted. "We were all living together, and we were like a family." She said that what she always wanted was to make records and be famous and a star. The group's philosophy was a band is like a sacred trust, according to Getz. We assumed she was making a life commitment. Big Brother had been offered a month-long residency at a Chicago club near the end of August. The other 4 urged her to join them for the gig. "I put it to her in such a way that she should make the right decision. Going east to Chicago was a big deal for us," Albin explained. Janis broke down in tears and agreed, but then she was still torn about her prospects. "I'm hoping the Chicago job will show me exactly how good Big Brother is, and then I can make up my mind," she wrote home. Complicating matters further, the band decided to fire Chet Helms, its manager of 16 months. Helms, who named the band, was linked so closely to the group that in 1965 he was considered Big Brother, and the musicians, the holding company. But now that the family dog dances at the Avalon were so time-consuming, Helms had less time to focus on Big Brother's career. The band members wanted a more professional manager who could elevate them to the next level of success. They hoped this would also entice Janis to stay. "We had to sit down and decide who was going to go over and tell him," Albin recalled. "He was very involved with the Avalon and the family dog. It was obvious we were playing second fiddle. We needed somebody to just concentrate on our career." Helms took the news calmly, expressing no ill will toward the group, to which he'd introduced Janis. "I wasn't in this to make money," Helms once said idealistically. "I was in it for the revolution." With no manager and a conflicted lead singer, but with plane tickets in hand, Big Brother set off for what it hoped would be a new chapter in Chicago. Janis would get her first taste of band life on the road, as well as its inherent diversions. That's the end of Chapter 11. Wow, a lot happened in Chapter 11. Let me know what you guys thought of Chapter 11 in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.